Resuming debate, the honourable member for Surrey Centre.
Mr. Speaker, Sikhs first came to this great country in 1897. Today, there are over 500,000 Sikhs in Canada, making approximately 1.5% of the population. Mr. Speaker, the story of this bill began in 1897 with Risaldar Major Kesar Singh of the British Indian Army landing on the shores of this great land. Kesar Singh and his fellow Sikh soldiers were in awe with his land's abundance and beauty. So when they went back, they told their fellow family and friends, and a few years later, Sikhs started to migrate and settled in Abbotsford and worked in the forestry and agriculture sectors. By 1906, there were 1,500 Sikhs in Canada. They faced many challenges: the anti-Oriental riots of 1907, a push to have them move to British Honduras, legislation to prohibit them from owning property, and not being allowed to vote, and the list goes on. In 1914, the Kamagata Maru landed in the Burrard Inlet with 376 passengers, 340 of whom were Sikhs. They were ordered to leave, and when they returned, 19 were shot and killed. But they were not to be deterred. They worked hard and pushed for their right to vote. They built communities, gurdwaras, and industry. They joined the Canadian Army, beginning with Private Buckham Singh, who served the 20th Canadian Infantry in Flanders. Private Singh was one of the approximate 10 Sikh Canadians who served in the Canadian Army during the Great War. He was wounded on the battlefield and sent back home to Kitchener after he contracted tuberculosis. He would later pass away and be buried there. Every year on Remembrance Day, Sikhs in Kitchener-Waterloo go to his grave for a special ceremony. In 1943, Khalsa Diwan Society, the first Sikh society in Canada, sent a 12-person delegation to seek the right to vote in Canada, and by 1947, they had received that right, thanks to the society. Though many officials tried to thwart their efforts to strive, specifically the likes of William Hopkinson, and two Sikh pioneers, Bhai Bhag Singh and Bhai Batan Singh, even lost their lives to his manipulative and racist actions. The Sikh pioneers continued to push ahead. Sikhs in Canada have always had a passion to build institutes and cooperatives to help their communities succeed, but at the same time preserve and cherish their faith, language, and culture. In fact, they are the most visible of visible minorities, sporting steel bracelets, turbans, and beards. Besides gurdwaras, they founded the Guru Nanak Mining and Trust Company in 1909 in Lions Bay, West Vancouver, under the guidance of the great Professor Teja Singh. Today, there is a Khalsa Credit Union with almost $500 million in assets, over a dozen Sikh private schools, including Khalsa School, Sikh Academy, Guru Angad Dev Academy, and Gobind Sarwar, to name a few. They have built their own non-profit crematoriums, including the Five Rivers Funeral Home, to help with funeral rites of Sikh and Hindu Canadians. They have built free kitchens, feeding thousands daily in their gurdwaras from coast to coast to coast, and also through Guru Nanak's Free Kitchen on the downtown east side. Mr. Speaker, this bill is about the story of my family and many like myself. In 1959, my father, Mohan Singh Sarai, immigrated to Canada, settled in Abbotsford, worked in the sawmill industry, and bought a small farm. He loved this country and sponsored my mother, Amrit Kaur Sarai, in 1967. Subsequently, my whole immediate and most of my extended family made Canada home. Sarais, Bains, Randhawas, Bhaias, Dosanjhs all made Canada their homes. But none of this would be possible, including me being here today, if it wasn't for our pioneers, who first settled, who fought for basic labor and voter rights, and who cleared the path for equal opportunities for all Canadians. Mr. Speaker, you may wonder, why do we need this Heritage Month? Why celebrate diversity in the culture and faiths that call Canada home? Well, it's because that is what Canada is all about. Mr. Speaker, I think Canada is this way because of our Indigenous peoples, our First Nations who welcomed us all to this great land, even though the thank you and the gratitude was not always such. They shared this abundant land's bounty and beauty, and although there have been times where Canada hasn't kept up to that reputation, the pendulum always swings back because of these elders and their values. So on behalf of Sikh Canadians, I want to say thank you to all the Indigenous nations of this great country who welcomed us and allowed us to be who we are and celebrate our diversity. This bill will mark April as Sikh Heritage Month. This will mark a month which for Sikhs is so important. It will commemorate Vaisakhi, the day Khalsa was initiated, a day on which hundreds of thousands walked the streets of Surrey, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Toronto, singing hymns, sharing food, and recognizing the human race as one, the freedom to worship as you please, and social justice as a human right. This bill will commemorate the Sikhs in Canada, whether it's Private Buckam Singh, industrialists Asa Singh Johal and Sunny Tully, farmers like Rishpal Singh Dhillon, women like pioneers Harnam Kaur or Justice Pulbinder Shergill, in policing firsts like Inspector Baltej Singh Dhillon, or judicial firsts like Wally Opal, political firsts like Dr. Chima, the Honorable Herb Dhaliwal and Mo Sahota, journalists like Bell Puri and Simi Sarah, or our athletes like Arjun Buller, Robin Bawa, and David Sidhu, or our comedians Lily Singh and Just Rain. All of these are just a sprinkle of the thousands who have contributed to the beautiful fabric of this land. It is equally imperative that we recognize many of the lawmakers who really changed the way Canada saw its immigrants and its diverse culture, notably the Right Honourable Pierre Trudeau and the Right Honourable John Chrétien, who implemented the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the policy of multiculturalism. If it were not for these two key bills, we would not be tabling and debating this bill today. Mr. Speaker, let us celebrate the achievements of Sikhs in Canada and leave stories for our children. Thank you.
Reprise du débat.